Hi, everybody. I'm Tim Newton from the Crannard School of Management, joined today by Beth Ford. And I've got to make sure I get your title right, Beth. You are Group Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer with Land O'Lakes. First of all, does that all fit on a business card?
I was going to say it's a little lengthy, but yes, that is the exact title.
They say, Beth, that variety is the spice of life. You've had a very spicy life because you work in a lot of different companies in a lot of different industries. Before we talk about what you do at Land O'Lakes, give us a flavor of what you've done in the past before this current position.
You know, I've been in business for 30 years. Off of campus, off my undergrad, I went to work in the oil industry. I worked for Mobil Oil in line operations, managed tanker and barge trucking facilities, real line operations, and did a stint in headquarters, a couple stints in headquarters. And then I went into a small company, Persico, who was the external supply chain manager for McDonald's. And then I went to Pepsi. I managed their North American supply chain, their strategy, their transportation fleet operations. Then I went to publishing. That seemed like a left turn. What happened there? And I was explaining to somebody that it was about children and literacy. Scholastic is a children's publisher. Harry Potter, Clifford the Big Red Dog. And so I was in publishing for about 7 years, and I worked for them and for Hachette, the Little Brown Books and things like that. Then I went to chemicals. IFF, which is a multinational, and really there was working around the world, and that was a really fascinating job. And then have landed at Land O'Lakes, where it's a food production and agribusiness. Everybody knows us for our butter, our dairy products, but actually we're an interesting farm to fork Fortune 200 company.
Clearly, you started this when you were 12 years old.
Yeah, right.
But talk about what are your daily responsibilities, your overall responsibilities at Land O'Lakes?
So I'm the Chief Operating Officer, so I'm responsible for Purina. So we own Purina, animal nutrition, and Land O'Lakes, the dairy business. We also have Winfield Solutions, which is an ag tech platform. So I'm running those businesses from a P&L perspective, and let's say that that's 2/3 of $8 to $10 billion of the businesses. And then I also am the Chief Supply Chain Officer, which is really, as I mentioned, kind of where my career began. I've run many facilities. I've had manufacturing, engineering, IT. I also have the CIO. I have R&D. So when you say, tell me about the day, well, my day is different, and it's why I love my role. I'm really working, my job now, I believe, is to put the best players on the field. I spend a lot of time on talent, spend a lot of time on the strategies, but working with my teams, many of whom, of course, are much deeper in their knowledge and know more about their businesses, the issues, their technical issues than I would, because that's their role. And so my job is broad, but more centrally, it's working with the talent in the organization to make sure we have the best players on the field.
When we talk to people who come in, most of the conversation is around talent acquisition, and it's the hardest thing. It's the most important thing a company has to do. What does Land O'Lakes look for when you're hiring, whether it's at an entry-level position or at a senior position? Is there a quality? Is there a characteristic? What does someone have to do to work in your organization?
That is a great question, and I've mentioned it a couple times today. Centrally, what I look for is a leader of people. You have to really love people, I think, in a business or in many functions of a business. And certainly as I started out, those are people-intensive parts of businesses. When you're running manufacturing, when you're running logistics, and now when I'm running broad businesses, whether it's marketing or it has finance, whatever, these are people. And so what I look for is leadership, and the way you evidence that is, are you able to take initiative? Do you get followership? And a simple question I ask when I'm on campus, or have asked, and I've interviewed folks here at Purdue for different organizations, is tell me about projects you've been involved with, team projects or organizations, and then what role did you play? And you can hear a lot in that answer. You know, somebody had something that was interesting to them. They decided they wanted to jump into an organization, and then they were suddenly named as the person who was going to lead this project. Or you have a team and you're working on a school class project and they see you as the leader, or you're working to facilitate success in that project. So centrally, what I look for is a leader of people, because I believe, and especially at a school like Purdue, you don't get into this university if you're not pretty intelligent. You'll figure that out. You'll figure out the technical issues, the business related issues. The question is, how are you interacting and collaborating as a teammate, and are you able to bring others along? So leadership is centrally what I'm looking for at no matter what the level.
I've seen a lot of interviews with you and talking about trying to get women into leadership roles particularly. What are either the challenges or the advantages that a woman coming into the workforce today, and especially in your field in supply chain, has to deal with?
Yeah, I mean, I started in supply chain and now I'm running businesses, so I've got the full P&L responsibility where I saw certainly more women coming in from a marketing organization. So what are the advantages? I'll go back to your question. What are the advantages for women right now? I think right now there is a real desire for diversity, and there is an understanding for most organizations how important that is. Leadership of organizations from a minority or a female perspective is important, and it gives us a broader view. And organizations, research would show, are more successful when they have more diverse representation. So I think that's an advantage to women. I think that the opportunity for women and the challenge that they need to continue to work on is not taking themselves out of play early. So I was just mentioning to one of your colleagues, what the research would show is that year one, as somebody enters the workforce, male and female, when they're asked what they want to achieve, probably 45%, both men and women, say they want to get to the top levels. They want to get to the C-suite level. And then after year two, when they were interviewed again, the women would say that dropped to like below 20%, whereas the men, it stayed up in the 30s and 40s. And so why is that? And when they interviewed women, they were told that they didn't see role models. They lost their confidence. Mm-hmm. So a couple of the things that I think are important, and I say, is preparation. Do your work, do your research, do it well. Be a good teammate. Confidence. And that sounds like a generalization. It is not. I've seen people who are so capable and talented, and they lose their confidence, and they make choices then and take themselves out of play. And then they are not able to achieve everything they could achieve. And then resilience. Guess what? Life is bumpy. Mm-hmm. It's part of the journey. And that's part of the fun of it. And if you put yourself in that frame that, boy, that didn't go so well. Geez, that was a failure. I'm going to learn from that, and I'm going to move on. And you don't wear it like an anchor around your neck, you can achieve much. If you take yourself out of play and you don't have resilience and grit and learn that you're going to learn and you're going to move forward, that's a real problem. So for women, the thing I would say for starting a career is allow yourself to go on that journey, have resilience, have confidence. You didn't get stupid overnight, right? That didn't happen. And even if you don't see someone that is exactly that role model that you're aspiring to, be your own person. You can achieve much if you just have confidence in yourself.
Getting over that fear of failure, whether you're a man or a woman, it's
hard.
A difficult thing to overcome sometimes.
It really is. It feels uncomfortable. It feels embarrassing. It's safer. Some of my biggest growth moments have been the times that I've been least comfortable. I've moved, as you know, 6 industries, 7 companies. It's not like I was deep in knowledge in any of those areas, right? And so it can be scary. It's hard. But the fact is that if you have confidence in yourself, if you ask some questions, if you ask for help, people want to help. People want to help you learn. They want your success too. So that fear of failure, it's real. All of us have it. Mm-hmm. It's not like somebody else doesn't have it. But I think when you put that aside and you decide you're going to just try anyway, it's much better. You can have much more success.
Shifting gears for a second, you talked early on about the farm to table. Mm-hmm. I think people probably are more interested, more cognizant now of how their food has been prepared than they were years ago. From a transparency standpoint, what does Land O'Lakes do? So
Land O'Lakes, the heritage was in 1921. We are farmer owned. So we definitely, we're going right from the acre all the way to the table. We still are farmer owned. The heritage were up in Midwest dairymen who had sweet cream butter, and they wanted to get power in the channel and get distribution in the population centers in the East. And they did that. They banded together, formed a co-op, and then after formed a supply co-op after that was successful. So they had an animal feed business. Now, it wasn't Purina, which is what we own now. So Land O'Lakes folks know us for our heritage dairy business. And we also own Cozy Shack, which is a pudding company. We have cheese, snack cheese. We have a number of dairy elements, but we also own Purina, and we have Purina, and then we have Winfield Solutions, which is an it's master agronomist. We have master agronomists. We have satellite technology that goes over farmer land. We can show them where the most fertile areas are. We also just recently stood up a sustain division focused on sustainability. So this transparency, it's interesting how you say, well, people know more now about how their food is made. Actually, I would say the challenge is that many of them actually don't. In our generation, my generation, your generation, probably 25% of the population was in farming, or their families were.
Right.
Now it's less than 1.4%. So people are getting their information in the best way, but maybe not the kind of right fact-based information. So this transparency, this desirability of transparency, I understand that. All of us would want that, right? We want to understand how the food was made and is it healthy and all of those things that are right for our family, for ourselves. The challenge right now, I think, is the noise that you have in maybe the social networking or in the environment where maybe things aren't as fact-based. We're in a fortunate position. Land O'Lakes really, as I explained, goes farm to fork. We work with the farmers to optimize production. We also work on sustainability. So we have sustainable production. That's what we believe in. We have an animal nutrition business. So we're working with animal nutrition, and then we really go right to the farmer. So we probably know the cow that had the milk that made the butter that's on the table. We have the whole continuum, and that plays an advantage for us because we do have full transparency back to the acre. But the challenge in the food industry right now and in many industries is fact-based, accurate transparency of information as it relates to food production.
All right, Beth, one last question back to today. What are your takeaways? What's the one thing that you want students to remember from your visit to Purdue?
Well, a couple of things, I guess. If it's one thing, I want them to understand who Land O'Lakes is. Okay, selfishly, Purdue is an important partner for Land O'Lakes. It's one of our 3 key schools that we really focus on. We think it's exceptional, the talent that comes through here. So I would want them to understand Land O'Lakes and the opportunity. One of the other takeaways that I want them to understand is how exciting food production and agribusiness is. There are over 40,000 plus jobs created in agribusiness, and many of them go unfilled because folks don't see it as necessarily a sexy enough field, or what is it, and it's not, for me, it's not high tech enough. And actually it is pretty high tech in the ways that I mentioned. So the takeaway that I would have them focus on is food production and agribusiness, and the why is it's meaningful work. One of the great challenges we're going to have is how are we going to feed a growing population that's going to grow to 9.5 to 10 billion by 2050. Food production has to double during that time frame, and there is less land and less water. And with that, then focusing on one of those great challenges, having it be meaningful work. That to me is the takeaway. I want folks to understand why this is an exciting industry and why Land O'Lakes is a great partner for that.
Beth, thanks for making the trip and talking to our students today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
For Beth Ford, I'm Tim Newton.